Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder why some people seem to bounce back from tough times way better than others? Well, new research might give us a clue about how our brains make us more resilient. This study dives deep into how we make choices when faced with potential gains and losses and links it to something called resilience. Resilience is that amazing ability to bounce back when life throws challenges our way. Think of it as your inner strength meter. The researchers started by thinking about how our minds process information, especially when it comes to rewards and punishments. They noticed that sometimes our brains have what they call a bias, a tendency to lean one way or another. And they wanted to see if a positive bias, a sort of glass half full approach, might be linked to being more resilient. So the big question was this: does having a tendency to see the good side of things in your decisions actually make you more resilient? And if so, how does that happen in our brains? They decided to look at how we weigh up the good stuff against the bad stuff when making a call. To figure this out, they had 82 adults play a special kind of game. It was called a cost-benefit integration task, or CBIT for short. Imagine you see a picture on your screen. This picture has two parts, say a color and a shape, and each color is linked to a potential money gain and each shape is linked to a potential money loss. Your job is to decide if you want to accept or reject the deal. The trick is that some combinations were clearly good deals, with a big gain and a small loss, making the overall outcome positive. Others were clearly bad deals with a small gain and a big loss. But the really interesting part was when the gain and loss were pretty close, making the decision harder. This is where individual differences in how people make choices really show up. Now, what did they find? First off, they discovered something pretty neat. People who tended to say yes more often, especially when the decision was a bit uncertain, meaning they had a positive choice bias, also scored higher on a measure of trait acceptance. Trait acceptance is part of what makes up resilience. It's like saying you generally take things in stride and don't get too wound up. But here is where it gets even more fascinating. This link between a positive choice bias and resilience wasn't just a coincidence. It was explained by how their brains process information about rewards and punishments. They used fMRI, which is like a brain scanner, to see which parts of the brain lit up when people were making these decisions. They found that people with that positive bias and higher trait acceptance actually showed stronger brain activity in certain areas when they saw negative information like a potential loss. It might seem counterintuitive to be more active when faced with something bad, right? But the researchers think this is actually a sign of stronger brain control at play. On the flip side, when it came to positive information, like a potential gain, some brain areas showed less activity in these resilient individuals. This suggests that their brains might be processing positive and negative information in a way that allows them to stay more balanced. They also use computer models to understand the thinking behind these choices. They found that people with a more positive choice bias seem to be less sensitive to and put less value on potential negative outcomes compared to positive ones. Their brains seem to be tuned more towards the upside. And get this, the more they valued positive information, the more their brains reacted to negative information in areas like the daxi and insula. These are brain regions involved in things like attention and our gut feelings. It suggests that the stronger appreciation for the good things might actually help us manage the bad. The study also looked at how different parts of the brain talk to each other. They found connections between the front part of the brain, which is in charge of planning and thinking, and deeper parts of the brain involved in reward. This suggests a coordinated effort between different brain systems to influence our decisions. So, what is the big takeaway here? The researchers suggest that when your brain is really good at controlling or regulating how it processes negative information, especially in those prefrontal and parietal areas, it might lead to that positive choice bias. This bias in turn helps boost your resilience. Essentially, your brain is so good at managing the bad news that it keeps you more focused on the potential. Good news, helping you cope better with stress and challenges. This really is cutting-edge research, as it is the first time scientists have linked these specific brain processes, thinking patterns, and resilience together in this way. It's like solving a complex puzzle of how our minds work to keep us strong. One interesting aspect was how the computer modeling showed that having a more positive bias meant people didn't value losses as much, especially small losses. This could mean they're less put off by minor setbacks, allowing them to keep moving forward. The brain imaging part was key. It highlighted that stronger activity in the front and back parts of the brain when facing losses was what connected the positive choice bias to resilience. This suggests these brain regions are actively working to manage those negative experiences. This finding about brain activity mediating the link is super important. It means the brain's response to gains and losses is the bridge between having a positive outlook and being resilient. It's not just about what you think, but how your brain is wired to process that information. Now, as with all research, there are limitations. The study acknowledges that resilience is complex and measured here using self-reports, which are like snapshots of how people feel at one time. True resilience might involve how people adapt over longer periods, especially when facing real-life stress. So future research will need to follow people over time to see if these brain patterns hold up as they experience real-world stressors. Another interesting avenue for future research is to look at where people focus their attention. The researchers suggest using eye tracking to see if that bias towards the positive starts with what we pay attention to in the first place. So, what does this all mean for us? It suggests that building resilience might involve strengthening our brain's ability to handle negative information. By better managing potential losses and focusing on potential gains, we can improve our overall outlook and our capacity to bounce back. It's like training your brain to have a more optimistic default setting. This research gives us a peek into the fascinating machinery of resilience. It's not just about being tough, but about how our brains actively process value, manage uncertainty, and keep us engaged with life, even when things get tough. It's a hopeful message that our brain's processing can be a key factor in our well-being. Thanks for tuning into RUBIN'S Mind Lab. If you found this fascinating, give this video a thumbs up, share it with anyone who might appreciate a deeper dive into resilience, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next exploration into the human mind. Until next time, stay curious.